What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the CrazyFaceUno Podcast, where everyone has a story and everyone's story matters. What's your story? If you would like to support the show and help us tell more stories like the one you're about to hear, please visit CrazyFaceUno.com today, where you can purchase items from our online store or donate. As always, I'm your host, Shane McNeeley. And before I introduce my guest today, I want to first tell you about our next live stream coming up later this week. Tune in on Thursday, that's right, Thanksgiving Day, at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for our Thanksgiving edition. That's Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be taking calls and listening to your favorite Thanksgiving memories, and of course, hear about the things you were thankful for. If you'd prefer to write out and send us your Thanksgiving memories and the things you're thankful for, please email us at info@crazyfaceuno.com or send us a message on Instagram or Facebook. And it's my honor and privilege to introduce our guest today, the one, the only, a man I've known for a very long time, all my life, actually, my father, David McNeeley. Welcome, Dad.
Hello, son.
Well,
and everyone else.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, no problem at all.
We are doing it a little later, but it's going down nonetheless. Well, why don't you fill us in on kind of what you've been up to in the last, I don't know, I mean, your work and kind of what you've been up to recently, and we'll go from there.
Well, currently I'm in lawn care sales for one of Indianapolis's largest privately owned lawn care companies called Lawn Pride. And I've been doing this for about 3 years. And of course, this is late November in Indianapolis, Indiana. Not exactly prime time for lawn care. So we're kind of winding out for the season. A lot of times through the course of the year, at the end of the season, usually like around Thanksgiving till January, sometime there's layoffs in the sales team, and they keep 2 or 3 people behind, and they kind of have to earn that spot typically. And I'm one of the lucky ones that gets that spot. I earned it this year. However, I already had pre-planned time to be out for a couple of weeks in December, so still doing that. And yeah, it's going to work out well. So nice. I'm on the cusp of a sales record for the company, and have a chance of hitting that this year. So it's kind of exciting. Just got I'm about $9,000-$10,000 short of a all-time Lawn Pride sales record. So
that's awesome. You were telling me about that recently, and so are you for sure? Well, not for sure, I guess, but is it looking like you're going to be holding on to that number one spot then? And
it's going to be terribly close. Yeah. I have about 9 days yet this year that I'll be working, because I'll be gone. For those who don't know, I'll be in Florida seeing CrazyFaceUno live and in person. And
that's me.
And the Chancey Poo.
That's right.
And the Dana Deer.
That's right.
Anyway. The family. I'll be down there for a week and a little bit of another week's vacation with the family. And then when we come back, there's the company, Lawn Pride, is shut down the week of Christmas. So I have a couple days at the end of the month. And then I think officially now I have 9 days left of the year. Mm-hmm. And I need to be pushing about $1,000 of sales a day, which it's potential. I've got the opportunity to do it. I'm going to be pushing to do it. Everybody wants to see me do it, because the person who did it before was a long-time lawn care person, had been a manager at one of our competitors, and been all over the country doing it. And for lack of better terms, he was kind of shady in the way he did some of his sales, and I've done all mine clean, and I'd love to just knock him off and be the top dog. So
that'd be awesome. I'm
excited about it. So that's what I've been doing.
And obviously, I know, but for everybody listening, what does it look like your day to day? Do you mostly do cold calls? Is it Do you have like warm, cold leads? Like how does that work for you?
Well, we have through the course of the year, and I can start in like January when we go back to work in January as an example. First of the year, wintertime in Indiana, we'll be talking to people that have maybe canceled services with us in the last 2 years, see if there's anything we can do to get their business back. We'll be reaching out during that January, February timeframe to those who've canceled, and also what we call NIs, or not interested. They're people that have gotten a quote in the last couple of years for whatever reason, chose to take care of their own lawn, went with a competitor, and see if we can earn their business. And we reach out to those by way of, I don't call it cold calling because they were inquiries or customers at some point, but we kind of cold call them, see about getting their business back. We also, our company spends a buku of a lot of money on marketing. They'll have billboards up around the Indianapolis area. They'll have, last year they had TV ads, radio ads, a lot of marketing things that they mail out to generate leads that they'll submit, and then we follow up on the live leads.
Nice.
People will call in, we'll take the calls, and a lot of times they'll submit things online, Facebook, or through other social media venues, and then we reach out to them in that way. So it's not cold call as like knocking on someone's door that has had no interest whatsoever in lawn care. So there's a lead of some sort, whether it's, as I say, past customer, existing customer, or whatever. And then we generate, we'll be busier on paper hangers from probably about late February, early March, when our marketing really starts hitting the ground.
Yeah.
Then we'll be really busy until about May, and then we start doing different, we call it sales campaigns, selling beneficial services through other things. So we do, we have a system, I don't like calling it, but it's a dialer. Put all of our customers that don't have this service into a dialer system that automatically calls them, and we reach out to them and talk to them and see if we can get them to buy that service. And then we go all the way through. And we just finished up our last campaign earlier today, was our last one of the year. And then a lot of our guys, today was our last day until first of the year.
Gotcha.
So
is this year 3 or 4 working for this company?
So I'm finishing my third season. Which that in itself is quite of an accomplishment. I didn't have lawn care experience per se going in when I first started with them, but people that know me know I'm a BSer. I have good people skills. I talk with people, and I don't know strangers, and that is very easy for me. So I'm very relational in my way I approach people and talk to people when it's in lawn care. So from that standpoint, I've got my foot in the door, learned the lawn care segment of things, and from there it really is just using people skills to communicate what I know and try to help them out getting their lawn care services taken care of.
Nice. What would you say was your biggest surprise when you started this job?
It's interesting. Sales is what it is. Sales is sales.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me how I'll use the term sales pitch, how the cadence of your voice, the wording that you use, the order in which you use words can change everything. This last campaign we're on, we call it Round 8. It's an opportunity to sell an end of the season application that would benefit people's lawns. And when we first started this campaign, I wasn't knocking it out of the park. I mean, our goal was to, at that point of Round 8s, where our goal was to sell around anywhere from 15 to 20, about $1,000 to $1,100 of revenue a day.
Yeah.
And started out, I was 600, 700, 800, in there, and then just start changing, listening to people that are doing well, what they're saying. Yeah. And sometimes we're saying essentially the same thing, but it's the way you say things or the way that you kind of close things out that either gets their business or not. So some people are just simply not interested. I mean, there's nothing you can do that's going to sway them. So you just kind of roll with the punches. So with this being the last application of the year, it's just like they told me no. It's just like, hey, you know what? Thanks a lot. This is your last application we just did for you. You're done for the year. We'll see you next spring. Have a great Thanksgiving. And just move on.
Yeah.
And try to end it on a positive note. And I try to do that with everybody. Just, you get some people that are just crappy, and that's life.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
What have you learned? Not just different aspects of sales, but even about the products and things. Are there like some bigger things you've learned just starting this and being in this specific position at the lawn care company?
Well, sales are sales, and there's a whole aspect that, a lot of people in management above salespeople, there's never going to be a matter of being satisfied. There's always a quest for more, increased sales, improvement every year after year. That's, something. I think I've learned rejection, and not to take things personally. They may not want what you offer or what you're selling, and it's nothing that they don't like you personally or whatnot. Yeah. It's just a matter of taking rejection and not being beat up by a no. You and I are a lot alike in that we are people.
Yeah.
Don't like rejection. You want to make everybody happy. Don't want people to be upset with you, and that's hard for me. I'm not overly confrontational. I'm not a confrontational person, and don't look for it. Don't back away from it very easily, but I don't go looking for it at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. What do you remember? If you go way back, what was your first job you ever had?
First job was mowing yards in the big city of Akron, Indiana. When Kelly, your stepmom, and I first started going out there, I'd take her around town and I could tell her, I mowed that yard. And all over town, it was just like, I still do it, Yeah. We had a golf cart up there. We'd ride around town on a golf cart and say, I used to mow that yard. Of course, that was my first job, and of course, big money, $2.50 an hour, or $2 or $2.50 a lawn. Well, that was big money back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first quote unquote job. That was just as a kid, and as I got into the teenage years, a little bit of baling hay, which I absolutely hated. I despised baling hay, but probably the first real job was working at Pike Lumber Company, where Paul worked, your grandpa, my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was 16, they wouldn't let you be around any kind of equipment or anything of that nature. But Pike was one that was very clean. The owner, president of the company, kept everything spick and span, very clean. There was always cleanup to be done. And all their outbuildings were painted white. So in the summertime, they would hire 16-year-old kids and we would paint. It was me and one other kid that was his dad actually ultimately became the president of the company. But he and I were friends, and we worked there at 16 years old, and we painted and handled lumber and just nothing around running any kind of equipment or anything. So
yeah,
that was my first real job. And
so you said you were like 16? Is that what you said?
I was 16 years old. Summer after I turned 16. I turned 16 in December. And I think I started working there soon thereafter, to be honest. I know that next summer I worked there through the summer. But I'll never forget the first day going to work with Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Get up in the morning. At that time, when I first started working there, they worked, I remember, 8.5 hour, and that isn't right. They worked 9-hour days and a half a day on Saturday. That was their normal 50-hour work week.
Mm-hmm.
And then they transitioned later to working 5 10-hour days. But when I first started working there with Paul, the first day going to work, Dad was never one that was he was a high school education, not, in a lot of aspects, not overly educated. They're very wise in a lot of things, but Dad is a supervisor. He's a field supervisor, the yard supervisor. And first day going to work, he said, and his exact words were, anything and everything that you do is going to be a direct reflection of me. Don't embarrass me.
Mm-hmm.
And
No
the other
pressure.
thing, no pressure at all. And the other thing that he said on that same trip, I mean, mind you, we're talking 4 blocks in a little bitty town, and it takes 5 minutes to get there.
Yeah.
But it was the other thing that he said. He said that David, this is not right, and this is not fair. But if there's a shitty job to be done, you're going to be the one to get it, because no one will ever accuse me of showing you favoritism.
Yeah. I feel like that speaks so much to who he was, though. And, just Paul was one of those guys that, man, nobody had a bad word to say about him, ever. He was just you knew what you got.
I still run into people that worked with Dad and have nothing but high praises to say about him.
Yeah.
This last fall, Kelly and I in Akron was having a garage sale up there, and there was a lady that I knew. Her sister and I went to high school together, and I didn't know who she was married to at the time, and she ended up wanting to buy something, and she said something about her husband would love to come by, and he came back, and it was a guy that back in the day, he was a truck driver. He was lift truck operator, pettibone operator. He ran a lot of different things at Pike. Yeah. But he knew Dad and worked with Dad, and his name was Hugh. And I remember when he was a truck driver, and I'm 16, 17 years old, he had a semi-load of lumber that he was delivering up around Napanee, Indiana. Napanee area is a lot of Amish areas, Amish places. Mm-hmm. And they had me do a ride-along with him that day because they called it a hand-me-down load, which basically meant that you have a semi-load of lumber.
Yeah.
That you're delivering.
Literally handed down.
You're handing it down because they don't have lift trucks.
Yeah.
I mean, the semi, all the lumber was stacked in 40 or 90-inch wide bales, so to speak, and maybe anywhere from 36 to 48 inches tall. So there's a lot of lumber. And gosh, I remember doing that, and I saw him back a semi-trailer into a spot that I wouldn't have been able to back my truck in. But it was incredible. But
that was always the impressive thing going fishing with him, and him being able to, he'd back that boat in there just like it was first shot, like it was his, he'd done it a million times.
Yeah. But Hugh was one that talked a lot about Dad and never had a bad word to say about him. And,
mm-hmm.
I think when Paul passed away, I think the most illuminating thing to me, there was a man that worked there at Pike, and today we would have, the terminology we would have used would have, mentally handicapped. He was slow. He had challenges. He was he was just slow.
Yeah.
And Ray was his name.
Ray. I remember him.
Ray, had a speech impediment. He didn't talk real clear. Hardworking guy, but not very sharp.
Yeah.
Had the utmost respect for Dad. And the reason why Dad always treated him fair, always treated him right. Dad, by nature, never asked anyone to do something that he wouldn't do himself.
Yeah.
And he came by the house after Dad had passed away, and his words just resonate with me with the words that he said with him. He just said, "Doug, my dad, your Paul, Doug was the best boss me ever had," and he had tears in his eyes. Mm-hmm. And it was of all the people, I had the president of the company and the vice president of the company, the people in the office, everyone else in the world that came by. But the one that meant the most to me was when Ray came by and said something. Just because it resonated with me of who Dad was and all kinds of things there. But Paul had some interesting things, but it cracks me up.
Yeah, man, I don't know. I love hearing those stories. I love hearing I don't know, just, one of my questions that I ask sometimes at the end of my podcast is just about legacy, and like thinking about your legacy. And I feel like Paul is one of those people that left such a beautiful legacy, of his life and the way he carried himself. And he never left any doubt that he was a, upstanding citizen and man and integrity and loyalty. And I don't know.
There's a lot of things that he taught that maybe I never learned. But there was a lot of things. Dad carried himself very well, very proud.
Yeah.
And I'll say proud in that of his appearance. I mean, worked at a lumber yard for his entire life, but I can remember him cornering guys at the lumber yard and basically sending them home and said, you need to go home and get a shower. And if you can't come back clean, don't come back. There's no excuse for stink.
Yeah.
Because they just didn't bathe or use deodorant or whatever, and sent them home because of that. Dad, even when he was very, very ill, Kelly and I took Mom and Dad up to, East Chicago. And it was a weekend that we went up there to a casino, and Dad was in a wheelchair at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we made sure they got a handicap room so it'd be easy for him to get in and out. And little things, literally. But Dad had been sponge bathing for a while because he wasn't able to walk up and down the stairs to go to the shower, and just washed that way. When we went up there, they had a handicap shower, and I had to help him get in there and get out, and just him getting in there, sitting in a shower and rinsing off and getting a shower, and just never forget him just sitting there with an utter joy in a damn shower.
Yeah.
But I said, "You ready to get out?" He goes, "Do you mind if I just sit here a while?" And just sat in the shower, in a handicap shower, and just enjoyed that. And it's a stupid thing about Paul, but I remember it well. And that was always something. He was always friendly to people. He always talked with, never knew a stranger. I think that's where I get it. I think you get a lot of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But he never knew a stranger, always spoke to people, always treated people with, dignity and respect. Not prejudiced at all. He told stories of him working in a gas station when he lived in Virginia, and it had to been when Mom and Dad were very first married.
Yeah.
Well, first married or dating or just very early on in their relationship. But there was he worked at a gas station in those days in the early 50s, as full service gas station that somebody pull up, you pump their gas, check their oil, clean their windows, and come back in and do whatever. And it was also in that part of Virginia, there was a bus stop there, and where people would regularly commute to work and whatnot. And he talked about this one man, happened to be African American, happened to be a black man that was there. And you talk about in the Virginias in the South in the early 50s, that wasn't always something that was, racism was pretty heavy,
sure,
especially in the Virginias. But for Dad, it was not a big deal. But this black guy came there every morning and waited on the bus, and he always had like an hour and a half, 2 hours to wait for the bus from the time he got dropped off there or whatever. And he would always kind of sit out in a chair and sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the two of them, of course, over time, develop a friendship or whatever. And Dad told him, he said, "Look, I don't remember the guy's name, but Dad would tell the story that he told him, go back and lay back behind the counter, and you lay down on the floor, you go to sleep, and I'll make sure I wake you up before the bus gets here." And the guy started doing that. And Dad told the story of one day that two other happened. I don't remember what the race was of the two guys that came in, but these two guys came in, and Dad was getting their gas and whatnot, and Dad came back in and got behind the register, getting ready to take their money, and this guy stood up from behind the counter and told him, he said, "You boys pay this man and get the hell out of here." And Dad didn't know what in the world had happened, what was going on. And come to find out, they were standing in there talking about how basically they were going to rob Dad.
Yeah.
Hit him over the head, rob him, and go on. And it hadn't been for this guy behind the counter, he could have been, well, who knows what could have happened.
Yeah.
But little story. I mean,
I was going to say, he would have gone down without a fight.
But, just a little story. I mean,
Yeah.
but it was because of the friendship that the two of them created. It ultimately saved him some heartache.
They had each other's back.
Yeah. I mean, it was just a
cool
little
story.
thing. But, it's one of those things. It's not indicative of what you'd have seen in the Virginias in the 50s, as far as race relations are concerned. But Dad was never, ever had a racist bone in his body.
Yeah.
Period. That was just a little thing. But as I say, it just spoke of the whole idea.
The character.
It spoke with everybody. Everyone talked about how Dad was friendly and knew him and what a great person he was. So.
When
very, very honest too, but go ahead.
Yeah, when Paul was diagnosed with cancer, and that's eventually what took his life. When was that he went to the doctor? When did you find out, and when did we all find out about that?
Oh, he retired in 2000. Right after the millennium. He retired in January of 2000, and probably 2000, that summer was probably when you went up, and probably the next 2 summers is 2000, 2001 when you went up and stayed with him for the summer. So that tells you a perspective of how old you would have been. So 13, 14 years old. I think Dad and probably
it wasn't even quite that, because I was 8th grade. So it may have been like, I think I was 8th grade. I don't know.
No,
anyway,
he passed away in 2003 as perspective. So, but
yeah,
in
would have been
I think
2000.
November of just stop and think. November probably of 2001, he had surgery. He had to have his bladder removed because he was diagnosed with bladder cancer. And at that point, he got a urostomy, which you had to pee in a bag type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the bladder cancer. And then that went along, he didn't have to have any treatments or anything of that nature at all. But they had the urostomy bag, and Mom helped him with that. But that was in probably, I want to say, Thanksgiving time frame of 2001 when all that transpired. And he got surgery over in Fort Wayne, got along fine. And then it was probably 2 years later I remember it being it was over Memorial Weekend in 2003 when Mom and Dad both had gone out to Virginia to visit my mother's sister. That Dad had been doctoring, so to speak, for kind of he thought it was like a pulled muscle, a sciatic nerve, just something in his hip where it just bothered him. When they drove out to Virginia, they by the time they got out there, Dad could hardly walk. And on Memorial Weekend, I remember being out tinkering in the yard doing some stuff with flowers and listening to the 500. And Mom called and said that she was really worried. She didn't know how they was going to get back because Dad was in bad shape. And I told her at that point, I mean, this was on a Monday or whatever, I told her, I said, if you need me to come out and get you, don't worry about how you get back. I can always fly out and drive you back.
Yeah.
So just throw that in the back of your mind. And it wasn't a couple of days later that Mom called and said, if you will do that, I need you to do that. And before, 2 days over, I was back at work, and when she called and asked for that, I ended up having an airline ticket for a flew out there 2 days later. And I told her, I said, the only thing of it is that if we come back, I want you to have appointments with Dad's doctors.
Yeah.
And so I flew out on a Wednesday. We drove back on a Thursday, and we had doctor's appointments on Friday. with him.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where they started ordering a bunch of tests. They ordered bone scans, CAT scans, and it ended up being after one of the tests that they discovered that his cancer had returned and spread.
Yeah.
And that was in as I say, end of May. And it just happened to be, just talking about timing though, we're back that Thursday night before Dad's appointments on Friday that I get a call that Kelly, your stepmom, Kelly, my wife, her father had passed away.
Oh, wow.
So I'm up with Mom and Dad, that I come back Saturday after we did all Dad's doctor's appointments, with hers. But nonetheless, just the timing was weird because we went through a lot there in a short period of time. But it ended up being that Dad's cancer had spread, and that was an ordeal in itself. So it had spread, and
it was in the bone, right?
Yeah, and that his hip problem he'd been having, or the pain he'd been having in his hip for the last several months had been where some of the cancer had spread to. That was where it was really disintegrated. That's why he was having such difficulty walking. The cancer was causing the pain there. And they told us then, when I ended up going back up a couple weeks later when we met with several specialists to kind of get...
I feel like that's when I went. Is that when I went with you? Because I remember being there and like going to the doctor's office, there was like...
Could have been.
One, and I want to say it was a specialist, but... Because it wasn't the first ones. It was later on.
I don't think it was that one, because that day we had a marathon day. It ended up being, we saw his urologist.
Maybe it was the one after that then. Because there was one like that it's kind of like a follow-up, whatever, and kind of check-up. And
yeah, that deal there, it was interesting, because I asked questions because of you and I, but when the cancer had spread, we saw his urologist, we saw a radial oncologist, we saw... his family doctor. We saw all three of them in the same day. And why I remember that is that I asked him, what do I need to do? I mean, Dad's a male, bladder cancer, the cancer spread, what do I need to do? And without exception, all three of them, the urologist, the oncologist, and we saw two oncologists, two oncologists and his family doctor. There's four doctors. Every one of them, without exception, the first question they asked is, do you smoke?
Yeah.
And I said no. And they said, well, don't start. And all four of them, it just was weird to me that happened. And all of them then recommended I get into a relationship with the urologist right away. They made the mistake of telling Kelly then. By the time that, I think 3 days later, I had an appointment with a urologist, so it was bad news for me.
Yeah.
But
which ended up being a good thing, though, right? I mean,
ultimately it did. I mean, it was one of those things where I ended up going to a urologist that Kelly and the doctor she worked with, Dr. Farber, knew that was one of their patients, and when she called and asked to get me in, I was in there like the next day.
Yeah.
And again, and his first question, what do I need to do? Do you smoke? No. And so that was one. It was interesting to me that all of them, first question was if I smoked, and it was not. But it was good for me because it ended up being, got into a relationship with him, started doing PSAs, which is a prostate blood test that I did. And, because of how everything went, they had me go every other year. I didn't need me to come back every year, but just said if I needed to, if I saw any changes or anything, to give them a call, And so that's what we did and we moved up to Indy. Then just kind of got out of the habit of going to see him, but still had the ability to go back every other year. I think even after we lived in Indy one time, I went back to Terre Haute to see the doctors. So
yeah,
but you alluded. I mean, we. A few years later, I mean, it ended up being where, I don't know if it's the path you want to go down, but a few years later, because of where I worked at the time, they required, in order to get a cheaper insurance, health insurance, what they call doctor checks. They had to have a doctor sign off and fill out a form. And if you did that, if you did the doctor, did the wellness checks, what it was called, then you'd get the big discount on the health insurance. And
sure.
So Kelly and I both had come to that point where it was time for our physicals to get our
Yearly checkup.
Discount. Yeah. So it's the first one I'd gone to in years because doctors and I don't necessarily see eye to eye. But,
I get that, honest.
yeah. Well, then Kelly went first, and he informed her that she had won a colonoscopy. And then I went, and I won a colonoscopy as well. We had hit over that 50-year-old mark and need to have a baseline colonoscopy. So she went first. Of course, I made sure she went first. And then a week later, I went and had my colonoscopy, and that's when the doctor recommended, hey, you got something going on with your prostate. Make sure you need to get in to see a urologist. And again, had he told me, it would have been okay. But he unfortunately said something to Kelly, which basically meant the next week I'm seeing a urologist. So, and long story short, because of Dad's history, the urologist just wanted to, as a precautionary thing, he just thought, well, let's just kind of write it out. I don't think it's anything to worry about. But as a precautionary thing, I think we need to do a biopsy. So since we'd already done everything else with our insurance that year and had reached our deductibles and everything, they squeezed us in New Year's Eve. I think back in, gosh, I don't even know what year it was, 2014 maybe. New Year's Eve 2014, I had a prostate biopsy. And then, unfortunately, I guess how you'd word it, January, they get the results back, and it turned out to be positive. So it gave me the wonderful diagnosis that I, had prostate cancer, and trying to figure out what they want to do with that. So it was an interesting ride there.
Yeah. But everything's worked out. You've been free of that for a couple of years now, right?
Actually, yeah. It's funny. I did... it's a procedure called brachytherapy. There's two different kinds. There's internal, where they actually go in and, I'll call it, zap the prostate internally with high doses of radiation. The high dose radiation treatment and low dose. The high dose is where they go in and they hit the prostate very, very hard with high doses of radiation.
Yeah.
The low dose was a different one where they implant seeds into the prostate that emits radiation to kill any potential cancer cells there. Sure. And that's actually what our friend in Terre Haute did, Dr. Schmidt. So he's a great friend resource that I bounced a lot of stuff off of. So before I even went to see my radiologist or my oncologist or urologist and oncologist first time, I had a pretty good feel of what was going on. So, but like you mentioned, I go now every annually I see my urologist, and annually I see my radial oncologist. My radial oncologist I saw her last June of 2020 or 19, and that would have been a little over 4 years.
There you go.
So she told me that the next time she sees me, if things are continuing to go like that, she anticipates that she'll not need to see me again. And by the way, the calendar happens to hit tomorrow. I see my urologist, so I go in for kind of my annual follow-up with him.
Yeah,
I do blood week a week before with both of them, and then go in and do the follow-up tomorrow. So I guess it's been about 4.5 years now. So next treatment is in March, so it'll be 5 years in March. So
that's awesome. Congrats.
Yeah. Cool. still kicking.
Still kicking.
So
if we go back to, so if you're listening, I called my grandparents Mama and Pa. And I don't know where it came from necessarily, but that was just always what I called my grandparents growing up. But if you look back, their lives, I guess, it was, it's been, is it 2 years now? 3 years that Grandma's passed?
Yeah, she passed away. I think it'll be 3 years probably in April.
Yeah.
I think it is.
Yeah, and it's funny because, Kelly and you having, that, your parents, I guess. But for Dana and I, it was our grandparents. And it was grandma passed away. And then it was about, maybe a month before that her grandpa had passed away. And, it's crazy. But yeah, it's something hard to go through together, but I guess it's nice to be in this similar places.
It's weird. I don't know how else to word it. I mean, I'm an only child, that. So from my standpoint, on my immediate family, I am now the oldest survivor, if you will.
Yeah.
And Kelly is... I
never thought about that.
Yeah. So and then Kelly's mother passed away this last March. So we both are parentless. So from that standpoint, it's as strange as it sounds, you almost feel like an orphan. Because your parents, not take advantage, but you take for granted.
Yeah.
They're always going to be there, but they're not. And, it's just like now I look back and there's things which, I never went to my dad for advice. Mm-hmm. Never did. I don't remember ever asking his opinion on something. I don't ever remember that.
Yeah.
And, today that's what I wish I could do that with, just on different things. And Mom's much the same way. Mom and I had a different kind of relationship than what Dad and I did, but naturally. But no, it was. It's just weird when you lose your parents. Just all of a sudden you're. There's an aloneness, if you will.
Yeah, like a sense of identity that you kind of lose.
There's a security that
Yeah.
Not to put words in your mouth, but you always know I'm here.
Yeah.
I mean, you always know, and your mom, you always know that your parents are there.
Yeah.
So that's not.
I understand a little bit. I mean, I feel the same way with like grandma, and like when she was there, it's just like I didn't do a great job always of like reaching out and staying super good. My words are staying in touch I didn't stay in touch very well with her all the time, and a couple weeks would go by or whatnot before I'd give her a call or whatever. But you just find that you just take for granted the fact that they're there, and I get what you're saying completely.
Yeah, and that's where and I think I don't want to say everybody does that, but it's very common that happens as you get older, and it is sad, and it takes losses sometimes for, I'll say that to be a wake up call for people, but it is what it is. I mean, it's part of, it's a part of getting older. It's a part of maturing, but it's also a part of life that sucks, So.
Yeah, it's rough.
Mm-hmm.
Rough for sure. What are some of your favorite memories of your parents, Mama and Pa? What's the first thing that came to mind?
Well,
I know something came to mind.
Fishing with Dad. Yeah. I mean, I don't know at what age I know I could take you to the creek, and probably within a 100-yard stretch of where I remember this being, we're fishing with Dad, and at some point catching a little bitty bluegill and beating the living piss out of it. Just practicing casting, and just basically with a baby fishing pole, just killed the sucker. I did just beat it on the ground, but he just let me go. I mean, just having to have a heyday with it. Fishing with Dad. I remember Dad worked at a lumber company in West Virginia where I was born, and he'd get off work, and it was always, Dad always had time. It was a matter of, we'd go fishing, we'd go play catch, we'd do this, do that. But it was almost like Mom had me through the day, and when Dad got home, I was all Dad's.
Yeah.
And, it was all me. Play games, play board games, card games, very competitive. Never, if you beat my dad in a card game or a board game or something like that, you beat him, he never let you win. It was not gonna, and it was one of those things, if you beat him fair and square. So you'd celebrate and run with it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember those times.
Dad was one that when I was growing up and in high school, and my friends would come over and we'd play hearts or spades or card games in the living room, in the kitchen table, and there might be 4 or 6 of us playing a card game.
Yeah.
In the kitchen. It was always with Dad. Mom was always watching TV.
Mm-hmm.
After Dad passed, it was always Mom playing cards.
Yeah.
Mom was the one that very involved with card games and stuff.
Isn't that funny? Do you think that's like a way that she just kind of like remembered him, or like did she ever mention or say anything to you about that? Or
no, they played cards with other couples. As far as I remember Rook with one couple. They played Pinochle with another couple, and then euchre.
Yeah,
it's just like even your mom and I, when we were young married, we'd go over and we'd play 4-handed euchre or cards with Mom and Dad, or with the other couple we play 6-handed with them, and we had cards was just part of your social recreation at the time. My grandfather on Mom's side, my maternal grandfather, with him, he was the one that I learned to play penny ante poker with. So my dad and the uncles on my mom's side, and they always played poker. Man, poker was a big thing. My grandmother's name was Betty, and I can remember, Paw. I call him Mama and Paw. I remember Paw, as soon as dinner was over, would say something to my grandmother before the kitchen table was cleaned off. Betty, get this damn table cleaned off. You need to get some of Doug's money. We're talking about penny ante stuff. I mean, it was
which means pennies. It's like a penny to play.
2 cents. 2 cents ante to play. And the big deal for him was getting what he called that white money, which was nickels, dimes, and quarters. Any kind of silver. Boy, that was the big stuff, But playing cards with him. So I played cards with Dad, played cards with my grandfather on my mom's side. But Dad was one that we played a lot of card games with, and board games. We'd play chess, checkers, Scrabble. And of course, we always had to have the Scrabble dictionary out too, because Dad or I wanted to try to make up words along the way. Had to be a legitimate word found in the dictionary.
That's funny.
It's crazy stuff, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember for as long as I was old enough to kind of play, as when I started playing cards, and we played 65 or nickels, whatever you want to call it. And, I was like, took 65 cents to play, and I always thought it was a blast whenever I could beat Paul or go out, or, started off playing, I'd sit on Grandma's lap, and she'd kind of coach me through what to do, and then it started to be where I got to play. Yeah, I got to play on my own. Where I'm gonna go rest. I'll play for her. Like I'll fill in, and the rest is history. But we started playing, poker and whatnot as well, and all sorts of games. That was always a big thing.
And see, then after Dad passed away, because we would play card games with, but you mentioned we were talking about Paul earlier, but I remember Kelly and I going up in September before Dad passed away, and at that stage of the game, I was going up that fall after Dad his reoccurrence happened. I was going up about every other week.
Yeah,
and I remember us coming home, and Kelly was the one that said to me, "You need to call Shane, and you guys need to go up there next weekend."
Yeah,
and I said, "Nah, we'll just wait for 2 more weeks." He said, "No, you need to call Shane, and you two go up there next weekend."
Yeah.
And that was the weekend that when we left there on Sunday night, Mom called me on Monday, and Dad was having problems.
It was later that week, right?
Yeah, and he passed away later that week. So if it wouldn't have been for Kelly, I would have missed that last week, because that weekend, because we were all playing cards that weekend too. So then after Dad passed, with Mom was always a big deal playing cards. So
Man, I miss that old fart.
Yeah. I hear it. Yeah.
Tearing up thinking about it. Just thinking
I
about
know.
sitting there with him, and such a good guy. Such good times. I don't know.
And
That same like fishing was always I had that summer that I got to spend with him, and I think it was right after he had retired, and so
yeah.
we went fishing all day, every day, and those days, yeah, I don't know, played cards all the time, still played cards, so I just played us three, or, somebody would come in, and friends or whatever, I don't know, just good times.
Yeah.
Some of my fondest memories are especially with your mom and dad, Mama and Paul, was waking up in the mornings, and every morning the radio was playing. It was the country station. What was it? 100.5. Is that it? I don't know. Something like that.
100.5 WWKI.
Yeah, WWKI.
Kokomo.
And it was the country music, because I wasn't really into country music, but I was after that. No, I remember, so the coffee was going, it was coffee and the newspaper and the radio, and that's what you did. You sat there and, you just hung out, you woke up, and that was the morning routine every morning. And it's one of my favorite memories. I don't know. I love that. I love waking up. The walls weren't super thick. You could hear a lot, and you'd hear in the mornings. I was upstairs in my bedroom, and your old bedroom, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you just always knew that they were up. You didn't have to guess or wonder. Paul was always up at like 6 a.m. or yeah.
Yeah, Dad was an early riser. I mean, he got up and was at work. He got up probably around 5 o'clock every morning for 40, 50 years to go to work.
Yeah.
And even on weekends, he slept in, it was 6 o'clock, so that was him. He was always a big breakfast cooker on the weekends. He loved to fix.
Yeah. But only on the weekends. The weekdays, he didn't necessarily.
Bowl cereal.
Yeah, that was about it. Yeah, bowl cereal.
Yeah, but on weekends, he always wanted, whether it be sausage and biscuits or bacon and eggs or pancakes or whatever.
Yeah.
He always had a big breakfast. Which I get that honest. I'm the same way. I don't do a lot through the week, but I'm a sucker for the weekend. So
yeah, it's funny too, because I'm the same way, I guess, but mostly just because I don't want to get up as early as Dana gets up. So I get up when she leaves, so that's generally my morning. 8 o'clock, I get up. But a griddle, like an electric griddle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have one. I've used it maybe twice, to be completely honest. But I see it and I think of Paul. Like, that was, I think of, it's like those little things that remind you of I don't know, just memories are always fun. I was talking to Dana's dad, Tom, when he was here last week or whatnot, and we were just telling stories back and forth about things he remembered about his parents, and these little bits and pieces that trigger like this big memory, these stories that you get to tell, and I think it's funny. It's just you can see the kitchen, Paul and Mama and Paul's kitchen there's something about the morning light in that kitchen is perfect. When the sun's shining, there's like the two windows, and then I don't know, the sun just illuminates that room, and it's just an amazing, I don't know, it's a great place to wake up. And I can still see that sun coming through and see that backyard, and Paul would be sitting there on the griddle and doing whatever he was doing and fixing his food and pancakes and whatever else it was.
You didn't screw with his food.
No.
You could do anything else. You didn't mess with his food.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Man.
It's funny you talk about playing cards, though. Every now and then, not only with playing cards, every now and then I find myself saying something Dad would say. But playing cards, how you, after a hand or something like that.
If I only had this.
Yeah. And Dad's saying with bullfrogs had wings, they wouldn't bump their ass on the ground when they hop.
I love that one. That's one of my favorites for sure. Yeah. I remember that last weekend, too. I don't know. It's a funny story, but it's also a sad story in some ways, but just Paul the hallucinating, sitting at the table while we were playing cards. And it was, I don't think it was light out. I think it was dark out, wasn't it? I don't know. Dusk maybe. And he was squinting, and we were just after dinner, and he's like squinting and looking out the back door, the window. And Edith, tell them kids to get out behind that shed back there. She got up. She was a good sport about it, but the first couple times she's like, Doug, I don't see anybody. I don't see anybody back there. She's like, damn it. Tell them to get back out from back behind there. They're right there. And she just opened the door. I remember she opened the door and, hey, get out of there. It was at that moment that he knew he knew something was up. He's like, nobody's there, is there?
And it's funny because I remember back in 2001 when he had his first surgery, he had allergic reactions to some medicine, and he was hallucinating. And he was a dick. Oh, he saw stuff going on there that he was ready to call the GD nurses, and if they don't get them out of there, get them damn gnats out of this room, it finally came to a point where he realized that they weren't really there, but it was all you could do not to laugh at him, and that would just piss him off more.
Yeah.
But it was just like,
so, I suppose.
I would. I mean, and then he even came to a point where he realized that what he was seeing really wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I think the straw that broke his camel's back for Mom with Dad on that weekend was when, after you and I left on Sunday, we went back home. That Sunday night, Dad was in that hospital bed in the downstairs bedroom, and he was. Well, I'm even cautious to say hallucinating anymore.
Yeah.
But he started seeing people from the past. He was seeing his parents, his dad, his mom, his older brother that was killed in World War II. He was seeing people that all had deceased and died. And that's when Mom called a minister friend of ours. His name was Steve.
Yeah.
Steve was one that actually was one of those guys that I hung out with that would have been at the house playing cards,
Sure.
with us, with Dad and whatnot growing up. But he was a minister and a chaplain, and he came in and talked with Dad that night. And it's always one of those things where I've heard of people on their deathbeds that they start seeing people from the past. And
Yeah.
I don't want to project that it was hallucinating, that it wasn't real. It was real to them.
Yeah.
Was it some sort of a premonition? I don't know.
Sure.
I'm not even going to try to project that one way or the
Yeah.
other.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. There's no way to really know, I mean,
Yeah.
so many ways.
I'm not going to pass judgment one way or the other.
Yeah. It's kind of a cool story, though. I mean, in some ways.
Yeah.
What was the other one in the hospital bed where, was it, he was cobwebs or something? He was blowing them?
Yeah. There was a cobweb. Well, when you see a grown man lean up in the bed and go, and he's blowing, like, Dad, what the hell are you doing? He said, I'm just blowing those cobwebs and watching them move. They're like, oh my God.
What was the one with the girl at the end of his bed or something?
Well, he said, I think it was something to the effect of, he said, there's nothing for you here. You can just go ahead and leave.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It was
or something about like, well, if you're not going to talk to me, I'm going to go sleep.
Yeah, if you're not going to leave, you might as well just go.
Yeah, I feel like that just sums up who he is too, though. Just like, well,
if you're not going to talk to me, just get the hell out of here. Yeah.
Damn it, I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah. But that was always something, and
yeah.
I never, those. You can look back and laugh now. It wasn't necessary. It was actually shit. It was funny then too. It just had to get removed from it to realize what was going on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Mom was a little bit more serene when she passed, but hers was more, she had been in declining health. Earlier in the year, she had an episode where they really needed to put her on oxygen all the time,
Yeah.
to have the little thing in her nose. And her mental attitude at that point was that her life was over,
Yeah.
and she didn't have the freedom that she once had. She had to have oxygen all the time.
Yeah, she didn't like to be caged in. She
was not.
She didn't want anything taken away from her.
A free spirit. I mean, it's just like you couldn't tell her anything
nice
to do
way of
with
putting it.
recommendations with. Yeah, that was a polite way. Yeah.
She would have really appreciated that one, Dad.
Stubborn as hell. But no, the funny thing with her, Dad's gone. I mean, it have little things that happen. She started slipping mentally there later on, but it was one of those things where you couldn't even talk to her about money, or recommendations or things. If you're not paying my bills, you're not going to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And that was her. But she got frauded a couple times, and I think in the last year, we had to open up had to close and reopen checking accounts twice for her because she got scammed, and always looking for that. She always really believed that she was going to be the next Publishers Clearinghouse winner. She sent all that shit back, and I swear to God, to this day, now 3 years later, I'm still getting stuff that has her name on it. It's just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, she loved that stuff. That's for sure.
She liked to gamble. She had more of an issue with gambling than what I think any of us knew. I mean, I knew, but no one could tell her anything. And I joked about her spending my inheritance, and which I'm sure she spent more on stuff that what we knew, or want us to know.
Yeah.
That way it brings things up, but that's okay. It's neither here nor there at the stage of the game,
Yeah. Yeah, she had a couple jobs, right? But mostly she just stayed at home and took care of the house and whatnot, right?
Yeah, when she was younger, I mean, you'll get a kick out of this stuff. I have found a box of letters. Mom and Dad, and I haven't got through them all. Some of them I tell you what. Whenever you take a young couple that have just been married less than a year, being separated because Dad's in boot camp or at training in the military, they're several states away, and they're writing letters back and forth to each other. There's some things you just are not meant for sons to read. Just
oh man.
I just like, oh sweet Jesus, I have to clean my eyes out. But it's also illuminating to their life then, and Mom worked and Dad was in the military, and talking about
what branch was he in?
He was in the Army. And I think he spent like 18 months or maybe 2 years over in Germany.
Yeah.
And Mom was able to be over there with him for a while. They had some great memories and stuff over there.
Yeah, she spoke fondly of that time over in Germany. But I don't remember, after Paul passed away, I always tried to ask questions and like learn more about, so she would tell me stories for sure. And I was always trying to probe those stories. But I can't remember anything in specific that she would say, but she just, I don't know if it's she lit up, but she just talked very highly of, I think she really enjoyed being overseas and like being in Germany.
They were young. Mom wasn't able to work when she was over there, and they had friends. And I've ran into a lot of pictures of maybe obviously military couples over there on the base or in the married places that they lived, and their parties away from home when they're away from family and whatnot. It was kind of interesting where they'd be around maybe New Year's Eve or Christmas or Thanksgiving, just sitting around and drinking beer and partying and whatnot. And those photos and whatnot. Then, as I say, then piecing things together, some of the letters, and it's always interesting to see check registers from and canceled checks from the early 50s and 60s when they were very, very young. I was young, where, you know, money that they spent, and seeing uh, as crazy as this sounds, seeing a check written for $1
Yeah.
for cash. I mean, but you're looking at people that were making, maybe $1 an hour
Mm-hmm.
or less, where I've seen W-2s and tax stuff from late 50s, early 60s, and it's like, they did okay for what they did and what they made at the time. They were never wealthy, never a lot of money, but always made their money stretch and whatnot. And, just different things. It's always interesting to see some of the things that's there. But
anything you read in besides the young
letters?
love back and forth that
Yeah, but we won't go the young love, son. I guarantee you don't want any part of that.
Man, I'm so curious about how that went down.
I would have sheltered you from that. But little things of, because Dad was in Fort Benning, Georgia.
Okay.
And Mom was in the process of coming down there to join him after he got out of the school or the training that he was at, and they were going to live down there. And Dad talking about looking for apartments and places to live, and and how much rent was going to be, and that if they watched their pennies, they could afford it. If they just watched themselves, and may have to get a job, or another job, or different things like that. But talking about $40 a month for rent or whatever it was. I can't remember the exact figure, but in some places where maybe two couples renting the same place and sharing expenses. It was little things of that nature that was just always kind of interesting. And then I remember, finding, fast forwarding several years when we moved from West Virginia to Virginia. Dad was or moved from West Virginia to Indiana. Dad came up probably in February or March before we moved in June.
Right.
And him writing letters, 2 or 3 letters back and forth to Mom and myself, and just the little things that would be said there, But Dad wrote more letters, I think, than Mom did, if I recall.
I'm not surprised.
What's that?
I said I'm not really surprised at that.
No, me either. Dad, Mom had a hard life. I mean, there was some things there that transpired in childhood that was really rough. And Dad, Dad was a lot more tenderhearted than I think Mom was in a lot of aspects.
Yeah, he was, and yet, I don't know. He's like, he wouldn't necessarily come across as that way, but he didn't come across as a hard ass either. He just was tough, I mean, he just was. I don't know.
Yeah, Mom was, I don't want it to sound insulting, but Mom was not tenderhearted at all. She
no, I wouldn't describe her as that either.
Yeah, she was, pretty hard in a lot of aspects. I'll never forget probably being 10, 11 years old in a 2-story house in Akron, and no air conditioning, and hotter and humid as hell. And upstairs, and just could not breathe, could not sleep. It was so hot. And I'll never forget one night in my misery, Mom, I'm hot. And her classic one-word response, so? Go back to sleep, just like, oh my God, just so with everybody else, God. But I'll never forget that. It still makes me laugh.
Yeah.
I reminded her of that a lot, even as we got older. But
I love that. Well, Dad, let's wrap things up.
You're the boss, man.
All
tonight,
right.
anyway.
That was really fun. Good memories. Fun memories to think back on and to remember. We went into this one and didn't really know where we were going, but Neither one of us were too worried about coming up short of words. So
all kinds of worthless information to share with you. Shoot, one of these times we can talk about somebody being a jack of all trades and master of none. I've done a lot of different things in life. We could talk about all of those. Some good experiences with them, some memorable ones, and some not so fun. So.
Yeah, well, let's do it. You'll be here in a couple of weeks, and we can put one in the bank.
I don't know if your listeners are ready for that. So.
All right, Dad. Thanks again. Thanks so much for showing up and sharing the stories about your life and the life of Mama and Paul, and some good ones. Thank you.
All right. Love you.
Love you too. Thank you all so much for listening. Once again, tune in this Thursday, Thanksgiving Day at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for our Thanksgiving edition. That's Thursday, Thanksgiving Day at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be taking calls and listening to your favorite Thanksgiving memories, and of course, hear about the things you were thankful for. If you prefer to write out and send us your Thanksgiving memories and things you're thankful for, please email us at info@crazyfaceuno.com or send us a message on Instagram or Facebook. If you enjoyed the show today, please visit Facebook or Instagram. There you can like and comment on our post. If you want to go above and beyond, please share the Crazy Face Uno podcast with your friends, your family, or just random strangers on the street. We're welcome to everyone. Once again, visit crazyfaceuno.com where you can buy our merchandise and donate. Your contributions help us share more stories like my dad's and the stories just like yours. Thanks again. We love you.